is great to be out here. How many of you were at the old jail today? So, okay, a few folks. So we may have to recap a little because it's a little under the 50% mark. But and since you had heard all that stuff before in school, I mean, so you probably like the 20th time you've heard it. So but what I want to do is sort of what we're going to do is I'm going to tell explain the story behind the plaque that we installed out here. And we had promised an actual unveiling, but we decided that time and tide wait for no man, including Piccolo, Spoleto, and the Halsey. So it would have been high tide. It would have been pretty hard to do the dive during the boat, and I still wouldn't have gotten any sushi. So we changed that plan. So we shot some video this afternoon that we're going to show. And after I tell the stories, then we're going to read what the plaque says. We're going to see a little bit of it out there, and then we'll do a little bit of singing. And you can tell the people who are at the old jail. They were not actually incarcerated for their singing, though perhaps they should have been. But I think that most of you know some Kcymaerxthaere songs. Some of you came to the talk before. We heard some beautiful Tehachapi music, and the Tehachapi are the great road building culture of Kcymaerxthaere. And that's music that you would not normally call music in our linear world. But the music that we'll be singing today is something that you may in fact be a bit familiar with. And so then that'll be the official dedication, and then we'll sort of have more informal discussion afterwards. And if that means you want to be as far from me as possible on the boat, it's a pretty big boat, and that'll be just fine. So the plaque that we're Kcymaerxthaere is a global work of three-dimensional or multi-dimensional storytelling, and we actually have about, if you've been to the exhibit, you know we have about 80 sites altogether in about 13 linear countries, and not every site relates to every other one, but all of them relate to at least one other one, and slowly we're putting together kind of a web to that it has this story going all around the world. And when I say that not every plaque relates to every other one, it's because there are a number of overarching stories that kind of define this world. And one of the most important is the story of the clan of Nobunaga. And I don't know if any of you learned about this in school, in the back half, the non-jail half of the boat. No? Okay. So if you didn't learn about it in school, I have to kind of bring you up to speed a bit. And the key moment of the story is that has to do with this man named Nobunaga-Gaisen, and he was a kind of a warlord in what we would call Japan, and he had unified most of the main island of what we would call Japan, and he had actually just slaughtered all the monks in Manhai Monastery just outside of what we call Kyoto, and he is sort of at the height of his power when one of his most trusted soldiers tried to kill him, in fact left him for dead thinking he was dead. And his mistress rescued him and sort of smuggled him onto a little boat in the river, and they went down the river into the ocean, and they went on a boat where she had assembled 75 of his most trusted warriors. And this was great, but he was basically on death's door. He was delirious, and all of a sudden a huge storm came up, and they were blown out into the middle of what we think of as the Pacific Ocean, and they were lost there for weeks and weeks and weeks. And in that time, he was in complete delirium, and the only words that anybody could understand that he said were the words love, the words defy, and the word betray. And so he just kept battling this, and finally they made it to shore in what we would call Santa Barbara, and the landing party went out there, and then of course they started cooking. Everybody's excited to get some food. And then Nobunaga sort of got up and staggered off the boat, and he picked up a red hot poker in his bare hands, and he wrote on this huge piece of driftwood the fate of the clan of Nobunaga. One will defy his fate, one will love his fate, and one will betray his fate. And then he kind of snapped out of it, and sort of he was okay, or seemed okay. And then a change came over him, and he actually, and it's too long a story for here, but basically he became a very bucolic sort of fellow. He became a fisherman. He no longer was interested. He started sort of a half-hearted attempt to invade a neighboring Guam, which, if you don't know, is a kind of a cognate word that means something like a country. And so he kind of gave up on it. But his now wife really was disappointed they had given up on all that power. And so she raised their son, Nobunaga-Gaisen, to really to reclaim their birthright of what we would call Japan. And so after Nobunaga-Gaisen died, Nobunaga-Gaisen started on this kind of epic journey. And it was pretty much doomed from the start. And it's this journey that had its pivot point in the middle of Charleston Harbor. And this pivot point is actually really the pivot point for the entire clan. So what happened was that they tried to find the land route to the land route to what we would call Japan, going the other way. And it was a disaster. He wasn't really a good leader. And in the end, they were so broke that he had all of his troops be used as mercenaries in the Battle of Athens, where Sparta defeated Athens. And then we actually have a plaque there in Linear, Georgia, to honor that. And so when he made his way up here, he had pretty much given up. He had lost all of his honor. He had humiliated himself and his family. And so he wanted to come here because the thing that was here that was unique is that there used to actually be 3 rivers that met here, not just the 2 of them. But there was a 3rd river called the Fen-de-Vie, which was a kind of an aerial river that floated above here, and it went through a quality of existence we call Fairland. And I don't know if you're familiar with Fairland, but it's a quality of existence as different from time and space as they are from each other. And it's pretty elusive for those of us in the linear world. It's probably responsible for this feedback. So what happened was that this quality of Fairland meant that no matter how flooded this river became, the level never changed. And as a result, it turned the entire river, or both rivers, into fire hoses, essentially with this huge amount of pressure. And then this aerial river came down. So there's these 3 rivers coming together, and the force was so incredible that if you threw a dead cow in there, it'd be stripped to the bone in just a few minutes. And so, as a result, this is where you came. If you didn't just want to kill yourself, you wanted to obliterate yourself. You wanted your atoms to be given back to the universe to start over. And this is how Nobunaga-Gaisen felt. I think we've all felt that way at some point. But he was in this condition. And there's one other person who was following him, which was a woman named Kcymaerxthaere. And I'm sure you're all familiar with water moles. I mean, Cyrus, you're the water keeper here. I don't know what the current state of the population is here, but water moles are sort of these large. They're kind of mammals, but they're about the size of like a large seal, but they can tunnel through the water. And when they do, they secrete this kind of mucus that combines with especially salt water. The freshwater moles make really kind of lame tunnels, but the saltwater moles it combines them in a very nice way and makes this mucus tunnel. And when you domesticate them, as people often do, then you're able to bring the air tunnel down to the bottom of the ocean. The bottom of the ocean. I guess I'll stand like this. You bring it to the bottom of the ocean, and then you can mine minerals on the bottom and stuff like that. So Kcymaerxthaere was a woman who was from one of these cultures, which came in very handy. And the thing about Kcymaerxthaere's people, and you can't pronounce their names, so I won't even try, so we just call them Kcymaerxthaere's people, is that the women were in charge of raising the children, and the men were never allowed to leave the water. They never saw land, they never saw even air above the surface of the water. So the women were allowed to leave the underwater community for 1 year and kind of live with another community for that time, so they would be able to tell the children about what life was like in the landed cultures. Landed gentry, I suppose you'd say. But anyway, so Kcymaerxthaere was allowed to live up there, and she and Nobunaga-Gaisen fell in love. But because of his fate, wanting to reclaim the birthright, and her need to go back, they agreed to break it off. But as he started this expedition, she was so concerned about him that she disguised herself as a man, as a soldier, and enlisted in his expedition and followed him the whole way out here. So by the end of this sort of travail, when he came to destroy himself, she was one of the only ones still with him. And at the old jail, and I encourage you all to visit that plaque if you have not, at the old jail is where she almost lost track of him. And if she hadn't been helped by the Akrava who lived there, she wouldn't have been able to find him. So she followed him to Backwater Point, which is sort of near Actors Wharf, and she followed him there. And she saw him paddle out along this and sort of be swept along by the current to come here to the boneyard, which is where we're going now. And she followed him, and what happened at this place is that he sort of lowered himself into the water, and the force did exactly exactly what he expected, which is that it started to corrode him. It started to disaggregate his very molecules. And she came and she appeared just in time to sort of gather him together, slowly bring him up to the surface. Because remember, his atoms were everywhere. He was like a spreading stain in the water. You can barely find him. And she slowly brought him over into the area we think of as Mount Pleasant, into the marshes there, and slowly brought him onto land, nurtured him back to health. And then at that point, he kind of realized that it was not his fate to go recapture an old homeland or anything like that. Where he was needed was with his people, and he made his way back. And about that time, as you probably all know, was the time of the Battle of the Platte, which was... I know, it wasn't on the AP test. Yeah. The Battle of the Platte was in what we would call Nebraska, and it was the defeat of the Urushiol. And the Urushiol were people. They were very scary because they used a kind of a distillate of. It's probably coming back to you now, but this distillate of what we would call poison oak to do their scarification. And they had a whole ritual that on the wedding night you had to dive into a hot spring and lay the stuff on the surface and then rise up within it. So their enemies always got very terrified because they figured, the wedding night was like that. What were they going to be like in battle? But the big problem was they spoke false cognates instead of cognates, so they were always getting confused in their battles. So in the end, Nobunaga-Gaisen was able to defeat them at the Battle of the Platte, come back to Ziraporo, what we would call Santa Barbara, and he was the Nobunaga, therefore, that loved his fate. He was afraid of it at first, and he came back. Well, then think about the prophecy. That only left the Nobunaga who betrayed his fate. And who wants to be the loser that betrays your fate? So all the Nobunagas after that, for a very long time, were afraid to do anything because they didn't want to be the ones to betray the fate of their community. Until finally a Nobunaga named Nobunaga-Gaisen decided that it was time to reclaim his destiny. But that is another story. We're very close to the spot here, and so what I thought we'd do is it's just on the other side of that the danger marker, and actually don't play with fire, kids. But it's on the other side there. We can't get much closer in this boat. Fortunately, we had Lindsay and Huck to take us out there earlier today, and so Cyrus, actually, if you wouldn't mind bringing the computer up, what we'll do is we'll do this. We'll see if we can just put it on the corner there, and the. All right, so we got some light there. So maybe actually. So what I thought we'd do is we'd, since we're out here, sort of seize the momentum of pleasantly drifting around it. And I'm going to show you this little video, and you can sort of see that at least we were really out there. And then I'm going to read the text of the plaque, and then we're going to sing the song, and then I'll continue the story, the rest of the story of the clan of Nobunaga. Does that work for everybody?
Sounds right.
Okay, cool. All right, so if you want to gather around, and I suppose the captain doesn't want us all to rush to one place at one time.
It's okay.
That's all right. Okay. He's got his jacket. So let me turn this off temporarily.
I'll use this.
And so if you want to gather around here, we'll see if we can do this. So this is just a few short hours ago, and so there may be I may cover some similar points in the story here, but it was I was doing the best I could in the middle of the market. So it's just so that's us making our way to the sign. That's the place the plaque is there. All right. So we hear a transformation at the boneyard. And we're actually at the boneyard. This is a place where three great rivers came together. The two you know under different names, and of course the Fen de Vie, which was a kind of an aerial river that came through a dimension of Kcymaerxthaere called Flora. Anyway, they all came here, and one of the strange things about it is that even when all these rivers were at full flood, the water level never rose, so therefore it's like a giant fire hose. And so you can come out here, if you threw like a steer's body here, you'd be down to bones in mere moments. So it's a very powerful place to come, and this is why Nobunaga-Gaisen, feeling himself a total failure, came out here, because he had he wanted to obliterate himself. He wanted all his molecules to return to the universe and start over. So why don't we go take a look at it? It's down here. Ready to go?
Ready.
All right. So you hear all that? So we may, for the purposes of the dedication itself, actually read the actual but it's pretty amazing to have it here where it's very unusual for the tide to be this low, so you can actually visit only if you're an experienced diver, but it's pretty special. And even the knowledge that here, if you're on one of the Fort Sumter ferry or on one of the water taxis, you now know what's down here. So thanks for being part of the dedication.
Next part of the process is always the reading of the plaque.
Do we need sake for this?
What? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we need sake for this. There's sake right
We need
here.
sake.
Yeah, Kate's going to help with that. And maybe Lauren can help with the serving of the sake.
So yeah, you guys can study the lyric sheets, those of you who weren't singing this afternoon. We're expecting those of you who were singing to kind of read the choir.